Right, okay, our next speaker is Ed Barnes, the CTO of Reacton Fire Systems, and he's looking at the understanding of localized building fire suppression. Ed, as a successful entrepreneur, business founder, owner and director, Ed is a team leader, orientated and a high track record of success, turning ideas into reality. He embraces challenges in no two ways the same day. He views every challenge as an opportunity and is passionate about learning and building his knowledge. Edward has a proven competencies in a diverse set of skills, including team leadership, public speaking, we're about to find that out, customer services, and extensive knowledge in engineering and manufacture. So basically his topic, as I said, is understanding localized building fire suppression and where it can be protected, the highest risks, i.e. kitchens, control panel, generator rooms, and what suppression agents can be used. Right, I'm now going to pass over to you, Ed, and you've got a lot to live up to from that brief.
That's it, thank you very much. Going to try and get this camera as it should, so going for a slightly different view to everyone else. So yeah, thank you very much, Ian, for the introduction, and yeah, it was a really interesting presentation by Philip. We just sat here talking about how in the next 15 years the technology Philip was showcasing, you know, we can genuinely see progressing through you know what we do as a daily life, but the benefits that it provides to really make a tangible increase in you know, protecting us from fire. So yeah, it's great, and share a lot of synergies with the monitoring side. I think there's a lot of improvements that we could be making in building systems, but also some of the localized systems we're going to have a look at as well, and making sure that the data and the alarm and fault signals are managed. You know, one of the big things we'll look at today that there'll be some questions about will be, you know, how are the systems maintained, who maintains them, as you spoke about, Ian, as well. So yeah, really good presentation by Philip. So today I'm going to try and keep it quite a visual presentation. We're going to look at some really simple systems that can go into you know, all types of buildings, so not just buildings occupied by people, but warehouses in other areas of the world that we protect. They can be operational buildings, such as like waste and recycling buildings, which share the same protected risk that you look at with conventional systems. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share this presentation. 2 seconds. Hopefully you guys can see that, and we'll get away. So yes, Reacton Fire Suppression, we're a global manufacturer of designer and manufacturer of localized fire protection systems. Today we're going to concentrate on just 2 areas because time's pretty limited. We're going to look at residential kitchen protection, so those in student accommodations, general flats and high-rise buildings, and we're going to look at control panels. So just a brief overview, I'm sure we're all familiar with it, but what's automatic fire suppression? So a system that can deliver firefighting performance without the need for human intervention, for it to be autonomous, to be combined with some form of detection and automatic activation of the system. The systems can either be, as we said, locally applied or applied in a total flood fashion, or normally, as we discussed, in a pre-engineered fashion for the type of applications we're talking about. But in their simplest form, the systems have a means of detection, activation, and delivery. So just a bit of a protection when we're looking at localized. So obviously, we've got basic principles of fire protection. So we've got sprinklers that we're all very familiar with, and it's great in the Middle East, UAE, that there's a much higher adoption rate of sprinklers in buildings. In the UK and Europe, it's still something that I feel that we're very much behind in, and that's why some of these local systems we're going to cover really are of use in sectors where sprinklers are not present. But yeah, sprinklers are good at protecting the property and life, but obviously, as we know, there can be significant damage with them, and also it's not a localized application or detection. So we've obviously got handheld extinguishers and fire blankets when we're talking about kitchen systems. Again, need manual human interaction, and are not automatic, as we discussed. So the automatic fire systems we're going to talk about today, we've got no human interaction needed. Automatic shutdown of the assets that they're protecting. It could be a kitchen, it could be isolating power, it could be a control panel, again isolating power. Localized fire suppression, the minimal damage that can be achieved by detecting early and targeting the suppression locally. And basically the fact that they're operational 24/7 without, again, any need for human interaction. So just one of the things we look at when we're talking about local application is the risks are not confined to just the particular local asset. So think of, again, a control panel inside a building. Again, if the building has a fire system fitted like a sprinkler, you're going to be able to protect the room that the control panel's in. But if there isn't a localized system on the panel or in the room, then you have the effect of, you know, almost no fire protection at all. Fires start small and out of sight. It's common for most building fires, not always in heavy equipment and vehicle applications, but in most of the applications we're talking about are localized, very small fires that then grow into bigger fires. And one of the especially common parts for the kitchen side are fire escape routes compromised by the location of the fire risk. That's how the kitchen systems came about, with designers wanting open plan kitchens in student accommodation, but obviously it goes against some fire design, some best practices, if you will, where kitchens were located basically on direct escape routes. So that's kind of how the kitchen systems came about. So we're going to quickly look at a video. I'm just going to hit play, and hopefully this plays for everyone. So this is just a short animation to give you basically an overview when we're talking about protecting control panels. One of the key things we try to do is a lot of education around these.
No, I'm just starting with Ian, because Terry's question again got cut off.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
You're live.
Oh. Was that me, or am I okay? I'll continue. I think that was someone who came in then. So
you're all good, Ed. It was just somebody switched the microphone on by mistake.
That's fine. I was just making sure it wasn't my technical problem. So yeah, so this is a really basic system that detects and suppresses fires inside control panels. So in its basic form, we use a pneumatic heat sensitive tube that will melt and burst when flame or heat is applied to that tube. So if we're thinking about a control panel in an MCB room or a control panel in a warehouse, these are becoming very commonly required items from insurers around the world that are part and parcel of providing a localized solution for mitigating risks. And an example of one of these recently is a control panel set that was underneath a rack of goods in a warehouse. So again, if a control panel had caught fire, it's likely to take the stock and the control and basically all of the stock in the racking above it. So that's an example of how the application can be put in place. So what we've got here is we've got an electrical fire. It's going to burn through the tube. And what you'll see is, it's a bit slower when I'm talking, but what you'll see is the tube bursts. And then in this instance, we're using a clean agent, either Novec 1230 or AFM 200, to then fill the cabinet in a flooding environment to basically extinguish the fire. So there's no real complicated parts to the system. It's a really effective, or a really cost-effective, easy to fit way to protect a localized risk. And as Philip talked about in the previous presentation, the systems can be linked to central management systems for building control. They can be given localized sounder and beacons as well to a lot of operators that are near larger control panels in factory environments. So it just gives you a brief overview on the control panel. So typical agents that, that can be used on the applications and on these types of systems. The detection methods, as I said, pneumatic heat sensitive tube, or we can use an aspirating smoke detector. Some various different approvals that can be put up against these various different products. The common one for control panels is LPS 1666. And there's just some more information at the bottom, but I'm going to quickly go through this because we're going to run out of time. So what kind of testing is used? So there's a rigorous testing with LPS 1666 that looks at the capabilities of the extinguishing agent, the discharge time, very similar to those applications for total flood that I'm sure lots of you are very familiar with. And this is just a short demonstration of the kind of coverage tests that are performed during that standard. But I'll roll the video on so we get time to talk about the next chapter. So as a brief, just before we go into kitchens, really simple localized protection product that can be targeted in high-risk areas in buildings, but also in warehouse and industrial facilities as well, and is becoming a mainstream risk mitigation product for a lot of building insurers. So the next section is domestic kitchen protection. So this is localized kitchen protection, not commercial kitchens, but student accommodations, household kitchens, but we predominantly see the market that takes the product as student accommodation and flats in high-rise buildings. So typically used is a Class F chemical, so a standard commercial kitchen wet chemical. Again, detection methods are pneumatic, heat-sensitive tube or thermal detection. Some approval information for the product. The approvals for this type of system is something that we're still in mainstream development of, to develop a full approval for this size. There's a lot of the testing or current witness testing is done based on the commercial kitchen standard, but it's something we're actively trying to encourage approval bodies to engage into, again, to kind of really push this localized fire protection. So we've just got some test footage of single hobs. So this is some mock-up test footage that we've done with some of the approval bodies to demonstrate really the small scale effectiveness of these types of systems in mitigating what would be a single hob fire or a single pan fire. And as I talked about the ability to integrate these into shut-off systems for gas shut-off or electrical shut-off. So you've just got a quick video here of a wet chemical system. So this is a single nozzle, very small cylinder that often sits in the cupboard of above the hood or below the cupboard, typically within 3 or 4 meters of the risk that's being protected. So that's just hopefully a very brief overview and some test information on that type of product. So, so just before I come on to this, so yeah, just to recap really, what we've looked at there in a very limited amount of time is just 2 ways that local, very common risks can be protected locally in buildings. And as I said, the control panel one is a really interesting part because it's been a long time coming where insurers haven't been able to determine what's the best way of tackling an isolated risk that could be in a building like a warehouse or some kind of industrial building, that full building protection isn't particularly necessary. And as I said, not so much in UAE and Dubai, because you've got such a great adoption in the fire safety side from, you know, the fitment of sprinklers and the fire code. So, you know, it's just a very good risk mitigation part, and the domestic kitchen system is another example of a localized fire protection product. So the last thing that, something that Ian touched on right at the start was about the competence and quality of products and how product testing is performed. Now, in a lot of the cases for full building systems and very common products, sprinklers, total flood, systems, in Philip's presentation, fire alarms and fire detection systems. There is a really robust test protocol in place. And as you come into local applications, we found over the years, especially in our journey, that there is not enough testing and not enough certification for localized products, especially the products we're talking about. And that testing that is performed isn't quite done at enough of a component level. So it's something that there's a real heavy amount of time and investment put into not only our products when we're looking at quality testing of products and the assessment of their longevity, but also helping approval bodies and insurers understanding why it's important that the competency of the quality of the people manufacturing these localized systems is really put at the forefront of the basis of how we go about protecting these localized risks. It's, you know, it's with the smaller systems, it is easier for manufacturers to come into the space and make a product, but there isn't enough competency and regulation around the manufacturing of these localized systems. And this is just an example of some of the vibration testing that we're talking to various different bodies about that is important because of some of the quality of the components that, while may not fatigue in the short term, things like plastic parts when they really should be metal parts. And that's kind of the research and development and engineering side we do behind the scenes. So that was a very, very brief, rushed overview of localized fire protection. And I don't think I've done too badly with time either. So yeah, thank you very much for everyone attending today. And if there's any more questions, as Ian said, there's a good Q&A session after. Hopefully it's been a good presentation with some visual elements in it.